Wheatgrass and Champagne podcast. I'm your host, Mandy Rose. I'm a holistic health coach with a passion to help others find balance in their life. My belief is that we can indulge in the amazing things life has to offer, like champagne, but still stay healthy using holistic approaches. Tune in each Wednesday to hear interviews with unique holistic entrepreneurs, learn practical tips on finding balance in your life, and get all the behind-the-scenes details of what I do to navigate my own health journey. Nothing is off limits in this series, so grab your shot of wheatgrass or your glass of champagne and prepare to upgrade your life and start healing. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in to Wheatgrass and Champagne. This week's episode is a wheatgrass episode, so if you don't have your shot of wheatgrass, go grab it right now. I'm really excited to bring on my good friend Kylene. I met her through Instagram, and I found her as she was actually getting diagnosed with Hodgkins lymphoma. And this girl had done functional lab testing. She's a holistic practitioner, specializes in gut health, and I was just so curious to see how she was going to navigate this journey, whether she was going to go the conventional route with chemotherapy or if she was going to do it all holistically. And I can proudly say that I've seen her conquer this journey, and now she has launched a book. It is finally in hard copy and it is on Amazon. So she's on her podcast today sharing a little bit about her diagnosis, how she navigated through that, and all about her book. It's called Healthy Through Hodgkins, and she talks all about the mental journey, the actual diagnosis, how you can go about finding an integrative practitioner. So this is such a great resource for anyone who is currently dealing with a cancer diagnosis or knows someone who is. So please share this episode with anyone you think could benefit from the information. She is a wealth of knowledge, and all of her information is in the show notes. So please tune in, enjoy this episode. But before we started, I wanted to say thank you so much to every single one of you who has reached out after listening to the first part 1 and part 2 of episode 1 and given me your love and support. It's not easy to be so raw and vulnerable and share these parts of my life with the world, but I know that it's meant to help someone, and if it helps just a few people relate, then I know that it's worth it. It was definitely nerve-wracking. I had to have a little bit of gin before I hit the live button, so we made it through. And I'm hoping through this season of Wheatgrass and Champagne, not only will I bring you some amazing interviews with great practitioners, business entrepreneurs, and experts in all different fields, but I really do want to sprinkle in a little bit of my own journey and lessons I've learned and make you guys feel like you get to know me a little bit more during this season. So I will continue being raw and real and vulnerable. So hopefully you will tune in for all of that. And before we get started with this episode, I really wanted to take a second and shout out my sound engineer, Thomas Xavier. He is amazing. He helped me with the intro. So thank you so much, Thomas. I love the intro. And now let's get started for episode 2. Featuring Kylene Turhune, Healthy Through Hodgkins, how she overcame cancer and chemotherapy using an integrative approach. Hi, everyone. I'm here with an amazing guest today, my good friend Kylene Turhune. I have been following her on social media for over a year, and through the power of Instagram and connection, we have formed a really cool friendship based on healing and information and spirituality. And I'm so excited to have you on our podcast today. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm bringing her on today because she is such an empowerment when it comes to holistic health, but also balancing it with conventional medicine. And of course, that comes from her own healing journey. So she's going to talk a little bit about that today. She just released a book, which I'm so excited for her to share a little bit more about and talk about. But I would love to just kind of get a little background on you. If you'd share a little bit about yourself and, what you do for your business, and then we'll get into all the good, juicy details.
Yeah, absolutely. So my official title is Functional Diagnostic Nutrition Practitioner. And I think that throws a loop for a lot of people because it has the word diagnostic in there, and I don't diagnose disease. And it has the word nutrition in there, and I'm not a nutritionist. So what it really is, I'm a functional health coach. So I work through functional lab testing. And my specialty is working on gut health. So I work with a lot of women that have, chronic constipation, bloating, acid reflux, fatigue, those sorts of things. And we use the lab tests to look at their microbiome, to look at their hormones, to look at their food sensitivities, et cetera, depending on what they need, to really create personalized, targeted, individualized protocols that really do cover, food, lifestyle, supplements, depending on what shows up on the testing. And yeah, so that's a little snippet of my business. And I've been doing that for several years. And I'm just a total health nerd who can't stop learning, can't stop getting educated, can't stop, taking courses and going back to school and doing all those fun things. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's one of the main reasons I chose FDN as a certification because I was on my own health journey and I really wanted to, as I began kind of dialing into, okay, I want to know what's happening in my body so that I can just get healthier and healthier and healthier and healthier. And I do not want to ever go back to these places of just feeling so miserable, so terrible ever again. So, what is it that I need to know? And then once I started getting into that journey of education, I was like, man, I don't just want to heal my own body. I want to help the world because there are so many women out there that are struggling with all these symptoms that, the world labels as, normal and common. And they have some drug for it, right? And it's over the counter and you can suppress the symptom. And so the more I learned about my body, the more I realized that really everyone needs to take a stand for their health. And I just got so excited about it. And so it's so cool that you found me, talking about that stuff because I really am super, super passionate about it. And I just really, as my journey continued and I wanted to get education, the thing that really separated FDN was the ability to test. And I really learned that that's what's helped me just progress so far is just looking at the numbers and seeing what's showing up in my body and not guessing. Because I'll have a lot of clients that they'll tell me I've tried every single diet, I've tried every single supplement, you name it, I've Googled it, I've tried it. And it's really not until we get into the functional lab testing where we're like, yeah, okay, so this is what your body is saying that you need. And this is very specific, very unique to you. And then they start seeing these changes that they've just been trying to see for years and years and years. So I love that aspect of it. It's my favorite part.
Yeah, and I think you bring up such a good point where what you do specifically is work with each woman, or you work with men too?
I do. I primarily work with women. That's just usually my main client base. But I have worked with men, and I actually really enjoy it because they're very much action takers.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I do like doing that. Yeah.
So like when you work with a woman one-on-one, I love that what you do is you create these specific protocols. It's one thing, to kind of have these practitioners that maybe make like a generalized protocol, or maybe this is like a common meal plan to follow. And then people are on their own left to wonder, is it for me or is it not? But you really dive in like specifically each person. And I think that is so special because that makes someone feel like, their body is getting the healing that it needs. I always say we have to find your missing puzzle piece, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, 100%. So I'll just give you a couple examples really quickly. So much of what's common right now in sort of the diet world and super super popular is keto, right? I think it's fallen off a little bit, but it was like super hot there for a while, and a lot of people are still on that bandwagon, and that's fine because it works for some people. But one of the tests that you can run is a genetic test, and you can screen for specific genes that actually would make it very difficult for you to break down saturated fats. And so women that really want to do this keto diet and are not seeing results or maybe even gaining weight from it could potentially have this predisposition where it's difficult for you to break down certain fats, and it actually is like the worst diet you could possibly do for your body. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff like that. And then you mentioned H. pylori. That's shown on a stool test, but everyone is so different. So some people have H. pylori and then maybe some yeast, maybe they have a candida overgrowth, or somebody has H. pylori and then massive food sensitivities, or someone has like 3 parasites in H. pylori. So you can't ever say, well, this is the exact protocol for every single person. I have this, cure all gut health package for you. I really have to look and see, well, what's going on in your unique microbiome, because so many things affect that: your stress, your food, your medical history, where you've traveled. Like it just so many things go into play there. So yeah, I do love it. It's so cool.
That's awesome. So what is the typical timeline? And I know this is so different for everyone because our medical histories are different, like you just said, but like, what is the average amount of time you'd say that like you work with someone until they kind of feel like they're ready to be on their own, or that they've solved a lot of their main issues? Like this stuff isn't solved in like a month, right?
Right. No, you're so right. So I have sort of a baseline commitment with my clients where we get together for 6 months. So the protocols, any protocol, a typical duration would be about 90 days. So when you commit to 6 months, you're really looking at, hey, let's get you started. Let's make some lifestyle changes. Let's order the testing. Let's take the testing. Let's send the testing away. Let's get it back. Let's review the results. Let's incorporate the 3-month protocols. Let's stay in touch. Let's really, I really handhold through the process, and that's not meant to be said in any way where I'm babying someone, but because so many questions come up throughout the process that we really, I have found that working with people that closely is what helps keep them on track and really get them the results they want. And because everybody's different, sometimes you have to change trajectories. What is magic for one person doesn't work for another. And so you can start someone out based on what the testing shows, and they might not be loving a certain supplement, or maybe they react to it. And so you just really need to be involved. So that's kind of why I set it up that way. And 6 months really gives us the time to incorporate it, make the changes we want, and for most people to really see results. Now, every once in a while, depending on what's gone on in a person's body, it can take longer. And that typically happens when you have a very, very sensitive individual that has been under prolonged amounts of intense stress. And so a lot of times their body will just needs to take supplements at a slower rate, and you have to really take a long time building things up. Their body will completely reject taking certain things, even if a test will, for example, we will run like a heavy metals and mineral status test. And sometimes their body will reject a mineral even if they need it, because you have to start incorporating it at such a slow rate. So there's a lot of things that can come into play that will make it longer. And someone like that could be a year to 2 years. But a typical person that this hasn't been going on for a long time, they don't have 10, 15 years of chronic disease under their belt, 6 months tends to be a really good healing plan for them.
So, okay, that's awesome, because that actually just brought up like a really good point and a question I have for you too. So you obviously have gone through this with many, many clients and have learned as you've gone along, and then also learned from your own health journey. How important do you think it is for people who maybe don't have, let's say a diagnosis from a doctor of autoimmune, or they don't have any major symptoms? Do you think it's important for everyone to maybe get one of these tests, every couple of years, maybe get like a check-in stool sample or a check-in mineral hair analysis, just to kind of see where your body's at? Because I think prevention is a big part of things. And then diseases left undetected can then later lead to major illnesses down the road, right? So what is your recommendation for that, for someone who's listening and is just like, I've been tired for a while, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that question because there are so many nuances. So for someone that is just super energized, they sleep amazing, their digestion is amazing, they just feel super great all the time, this would be if you're just curious. Maybe you're a biohacker. Maybe you're somebody that's like, yeah, I feel great, but can I be better? You know what I mean? So yeah, there are options in that case, right? Not necessarily a necessity. However, anyone that has any symptoms showing up on a chronic basis, I don't care if it's as small as you burp every single time you eat, you get headaches regularly, you're tired in the afternoons, you get plenty of sleep, but you just can't have enough energy throughout the day, you have chronic acid reflux, you cannot manage that normally, you rotate between constipation and diarrhea. These things are not normal. Even things like, I have PMS and I cramp really badly every month. That's not normal. So unless you are in just total perfect health and you just feel super great all the time, yes, I think everyone should go through some level of testing to see what's going on in their body and how you can optimize your health. And the sooner you do it after feeling a symptom, the faster you're going to get well, and you're going to have the knowledge and the tools to then take you through the rest of your life. And so I think it's absolutely crucial. And as somebody who was diagnosed with cancer and understanding that a lot of these diseases that are really serious and have an inflammatory component to them, really they show up in your life 7 to 10 years prior to even being able to be diagnosed. So that's a really significant number. And if you think about, what can I do on any level on any given day to make sure that I'm preventing this from happening 10 years down, I think that future vision and that future perspective is so important. And we are so taught and we're so used to thinking in the now, like right now I'm going to eat this cheeseburger because I feel like it and it doesn't give me heartburn immediately, so I'm good. Okay, but you're eating all these inflammatory foods that eating it every day or a couple times a week, multiplied by 10, 15, 20 years, 30, 40 years later, you have some sort of disease pop up. That's not an accident. And I'm not saying for people that get diagnosed with cancer or autoimmune disease that it's your fault. I certainly want to make sure that that's clear. We only do what we know when we know it, right? But when I look back at my life and I realize, okay, this has been developing for 7, 10 years prior. I look back at that time when it probably started. Oh my gosh, so unhealthy, so stressed out, so many things going on. It made sense. It made total sense when I put it in the timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to second that 100% because I just, season 2, sorry, of this podcast, I talked about my health journey. And when I got diagnosed with not only my autoimmune disorder, but then just last year with mold toxicity, if I look back 3, 4, 5 years prior to that, I was so unhealthy. In my 20s, I was on birth control for 10 years. I didn't know any better. Like you said, if we don't know better, we don't do better. But I just did what everyone else was doing. And in my early 20s, drinking a lot, eating Taco Bell and all the fast food. And although I try not to beat myself up and say, okay, this is my fault that I got sick, I do have to take some sort of awareness and say, okay, if I can say these habits created this, then I know what I need to do in the future needs to be different, right? And so there's that little bit of awareness. And so I think this is a great kind of transition for you to share a little bit about your diagnosis and kind of what you think maybe led you to get that diagnosis and what you immediately thought, okay, this is what I need to do moving forward.
Yeah, so it was so weird, right? Like I had been quote unquote healthy for like 2 years, like super healthy. I had been sort of healthy for longer than that, maybe 5 years. I had started with nutrition and kind of dialed into that for so many years. And then I really started dialing into the testing and the supplements and really kind of hacking my body and getting better. And I saw results. Like I was feeling better. My test results were getting better. There was a laundry list of things that once I started doing this disappeared. Like my PMS was regulated. My rosacea had gone away when I changed my diet. Like I look back at my life and I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to live on like sinus, what was it, Advil, cold and sinus and Excedrin and like all these things. And just so many different things that had improved in my health. My bloating had gone away, like all these different things. My energy was better. My sleep was better, just boom, 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 boom. And then I get diagnosed with cancer. Like what the heck? But when I looked back at it and started really understanding it, I was like, all right, there is no way that this tumor in my neck, which is the only symptom I had 0 symptoms. I felt fine. There's no way that this showed up overnight. No way. So I pulled out my iPhone. Thank God for technology, right? It's so cool. And I started scrolling through pictures. And you kind of have to tip my neck a certain way to see it. And so it had to be a very specifically posed picture in order for me to pick it out. But I started scrolling through my pictures. I was like, I'm going to find this. I know it wasn't here. It was, or it didn't show up overnight. It's been here for a long time. I'm going to find out when.
I love that.
So I was able to find the earliest picture I could find it, and I'm sure it was there before, was 2 years prior to my diagnosis. So I know. So I was convinced that everything that I had been doing for the 2 years prior had either slowed it down or stopped the growth, which gave me a lot of encouragement for not only getting it treated successfully, but also to prevent it coming back in the future, because everything that I was doing that was stalling it or slowing it down were already habits in my life that I could definitely continue after treatment was done. So, when you get diagnosed with something that serious, I had a lot of questions. I needed to do a lot of research, and doing what I do in the functional health world, conventional cancer therapy was really scary to me. It was a huge decision, and one that I did not take lightly. And I talk about that in my book, Healthy Through Hodgkins is the title. I talk about how I came to that decision, and a few things that really helped me make the decision was that conventional chemotherapy for my specific cancer, which was nodular sclerosis Hodgkins, and I was stage 1A. I only had one active tumor, so it was very early. And for my specific cancer, chemotherapy is about 95% effective in terms of getting rid of it and having a survival rate beyond 5 years.
Wow.
I know it's huge, and you don't hear those numbers a lot with conventional chemotherapy. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not hard. It doesn't mean that it doesn't, it's not toxic. It doesn't mean that it's not difficult on your system. It absolutely is, but you have a very, very strong possibility of knocking it out and keeping it gone. So after I had done a lot of research, because what I was really looking for was data. And the hard thing about functional medicine is that while there are a lot of really amazing, incredible things that you can do with natural treatments, because of a lot of regulations and politics and all sorts of things, and it's very, very expensive to get studies done. There isn't a lot of data in some situations where you can just search and then get a testimonial from somebody that's your age, your diagnosis, with a result from natural care. It's not that doesn't exist necessarily. It's just difficult to find on the same level as, obviously you can see a lot of information about conventional medicine. So I was researching, I was digging, I was trying to figure out all my options. And when I couldn't really I found some instances of women that were my age that were managing it through, diet and lifestyle and that sort of thing. But it seemed to be very difficult, very, very intense, very, very strict. One woman could keep her Hodgkins from progressing as long as she lived a very, very limited, intense lifestyle when it came to her nutrition and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I kind of just want to get rid of it and move on with my life and be as healthy as I can.
Yep. No, there's a big point to that. Absolutely. Because happiness comes from also enjoying the little things in life. I think, like Wheatgrass and Champagne, we talk about it all the time on this podcast. We can do all the right things, but there's going to be moments that we just want to enjoy life, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And that is so, your mental health plays so much into your physical health. And so I was kind of having to think through that, right? Like, do I want to live, like, sure, you can monitor it with your diet maybe, or be really, really intense or whatever. But I have this possibility to knock it out in 3 months. 3 months. I can do 3 months, right? And it's not that it wasn't scary, because it totally was, and it was miserable. I'll admit it. But I also knew enough to ask about integrative care. So a lot of people don't even know that this is a possibility, which I hope changes in the next 5 or 10 years. And I'm a little nobody. I'm not famous, but I do hope that my book changes that for a lot of people, that it helps them understand that integrative care is possible. I hope it spreads the word, because that really made a humongous difference in my life. Oh, tremendous difference.
So what I often hear, and I guess this is just someone who kind of watched your story unfold from the outside. I remember you saying that you were going to go the chemo route. And at first I was like, this girl's all into natural medicine and holistic health, and she's going to make this decision. I was like, oh my goodness, there's got to be something behind this decision. And you explaining it now makes a lot of sense. But no matter what, I think everyone relates chemo to the feeling of nausea, fatigue, kind of being knocked on our butts. So can you kind of share a little bit about how this integrative part and going a little bit of a holistic route as well really helped alleviate those symptoms, right?
Oh, yeah. So I'm not going to say it's easy because it doesn't matter what you do. It is a very strong chemotherapy, and it's rough. It is rough. So I would get treatments every second week, so every 2 weeks on a Friday. And then it's like a 6 hour or so process. You'll get in there. They have to get your blood work. They have to check it, make sure that it's okay. Then they have to order once your blood work comes back is when they actually order the chemotherapy to be mixed. Then they bring it up. Then they infuse it over about 3 or 4 hours, and then you can go home. So there's a long process to it. And then so that would happen on Fridays, and then Saturdays and Sundays I really just gave myself space to just like not do anything and stay in bed. I would try to get up and walk, but that was kind of the most exhausting. And then from there, I would progress to start recovering. And then the second week, the off week, there were some weeks I actually felt better than normal. Like I lost energy. I felt great, all these things. And I was like, no way can you feel better on chemotherapy. But there were moments. And I think a lot of that bounce back, a lot of that recovery. And then certainly the level of protection that my organs had from the toxicity and my recovery after the treatment was done, I think was in large part due to the supplements that I was on. So let me just kind of share what integrative care is so if people don't really understand what that means. I was using a lot of very specific targeted supplements, and of course incorporating my own nutrition and lifestyle that I had already kind of done for several years. So I gave myself a lot of grace during treatment because I was going through a really hard treatment. So while I had done the juicing and the SEACT and all these kind of really strict things prior to treatment, while I was kind of deciding what I was going to do, I kind of chilled out on that during treatment because I was like, I'll just let the chemo do its thing and I will live my life a little bit. And then, and so for example, sometimes your mouth might not feel great after treatment. I thankfully really only had that happen one time where it was kind of a little bit of an issue. And that particular day, I wanted to eat ice cream bars like the rest of the day. So they were dairy-free, gluten-free ice cream bars, but still, they had some sugar in them. And but that's what my body wanted. That's what made my mouth feel better. That's what I was craving, so I did it. So there's a balance there. But the biggest part was hiring an integrative oncologist. She was a naturopath who specialized in oncology. And her husband actually had been diagnosed with Hodgkins, and she had been through that with him. And so I hired her to help me with the supplementation during treatment. And so what is really, really powerful, and this is what I want people to really take away, you can go through really harsh treatments, but there are ways to do it that you can support and protect your body. So one of the side effects, or I guess two of the side effects that can happen from the strong chemotherapy that I was on, is it can actually damage your heart and your lungs. And that happens to a lot of people. I was reading a post the other day from someone on social media saying that their lungs really burned after a certain point. It was just really painful. And so we were taking high doses of supplements that were specifically to protect my organs, my kidneys, my lungs, my heart, and to help epithelial cell repair. So chemo, breaks down and kills all of your fast dividing cells. That's why you lose your hair. That's why it trashes a lot of people's guts. And so we were taking high doses of L-glutamine to help that repair process go quickly. And so there was just a lot that we did during the process. And thankfully, I essentially walked away. Now, your body still has a lot of recovery to do because it is a hard treatment, but I basically walked away with no long-term side effects. And most people, or I would say at least a lot of people, I can't say that. And so I look at a lot of these posts on social media and I see how many people go through the same exact treatment and they are in so much pain. They have joint pain, they have bone pain, they have, I don't know, digestive problems or whatever it is that's happening for them, or lung or heart issues after this. And more or less, once you're done with treatment, the conventional model just sends you on your way and says, okay, we'll check you in 3 months, then we'll check you in 6 months, and then we'll check you in a year to make sure the cancer hasn't come back. But there's no additional screening, there's no additional support, there's no additional anything to help you actually recover from what just saved your life.
Yeah.
And that is really hard to swallow. I don't understand that, because so many people are left feeling absolutely miserable. And the only answer in that model is to take a lot of pain pills.
Yeah, and that's just not like a long-term solution, right?
No.
It's like for when you're looking at this integrative care and when you're looking at holistic, we're always kind of going for the root cause. How can we
Yeah.
repair? And it's not that, the supplements or anything is doing the repairing. Our bodies are always designed to repair, and you're just assisting that along with, doing all the other things you can do like nutrition and exercise and mindset. But I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing, and I'm sure you talk about this in your book too. So if you could share a little bit about this, I think, let's say, for instance, someone's listening and maybe they have a family member or them personally have just gotten diagnosed with cancer, and they have this big question mark of chemo or not chemo, radiation or not. So can you talk a little bit about how going this, integrative route? So yes, saying yes to chemo, but also saying yes to the supplements, how there isn't typically, I mean, of course, you're working with someone, a doctor, a knowledge person, but the supplements don't necessarily mean that they make the chemo inactive or less effective. Because I think that's a big fear a lot of people have. They go, well, if
Yes.
I'm taking all these supplements, is it taking away from the chemo? Like, am I doing a disservice to what my doctors are telling me to do? Like, kind of branching and making people understand that it can work together very fluidly and very well for the body.
100%. So what I would say there, first of all, is to hire someone that specializes in this, because you don't really want to be guessing on the types of supplements because of potential interactions or contraindications. However, a lot of doctors just aren't, it's not their specialty, it's not their area of expertise and education, aren't aware of the supplements that are very, very, very effective and yet do not hinder the chemo from working. And so there's a lot of, I guess, information or misinformation out there. Some of the worries are, hey, if I take antioxidants, is it going to hinder the ability for the oxidative therapy to work? So there's a lot of, so for example, I'm trying to think what I was on, L-glutamine for the gut, acetyl L-carnitine for my heart and my lungs. I was on probably 20 supplements at least throughout the process. Yeah, CoQ10 for my heart. I actually still on that. There's quite a few that I continue taking because of recovery, and still, your body still has to break these down, right? And it still has to eliminate a lot of toxins out of your system, and it can take a long time, and they can still cause damage. And so this isn't just like a one and done thing. But yeah, no, there is a lot of misinformation about, or I guess you could even say fear, just from the unknown, right? And again, it's just difficult, I think, in the natural world, because they can't get, FDA approval for natural supplements, right? So there is a little bit of a money game in there. There is a little bit of a politics thing in there. And so when you're on the conventional side and your rule is basically to follow FDA guided approved protocols, then that kind of knocks out anything that's natural based, supplemental based in terms of support. So, okay, so I hope that answers your question in terms of, there are some that are contraindicated. There are some that are very, very helpful and will not hinder chemo. Work with a practitioner for sure.
Yes. Okay, good. Because I love kind of banishing that fear in people. Like, there are things that we can do and do the chemo as well. And I'm sure in your book you go into so many details about that.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier, your body basically wants to heal and it needs nutrients to do that. And just wanted to touch on that really quickly, because if you think about all the processes that your body does in a normal, healthy body, and you just take magnesium as a really common one that people understand as being really important. Most of America is deficient in magnesium. It's used in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of biochemical processes in your body. Anytime you're under stress of any sort, it gets depleted because it's utilized so quickly, and it's so important. So you think about that, just that one nutrient, how many things it does. And then when you're under stress, what do you need? You need more of it. So you need a lot of nutrition. You need to be eating your greens. You need to be eating your fruits and vegetables and nuts and all these different things on a regular basis to maintain health. How much more important is that when you are under a treatment that is oxidative, which means aging, and chemotherapy can actually damage your DNA as part of the treatment process and all these different things. And literal intention is to go in there and kill cells, and it doesn't just discriminate against cancer cells, right? It does all the fast dividing cells. How much more support does your body need at that point to recover and recover efficiently? I'll tell you, it needs a lot.
A lot. Yes, absolutely. And that's a really good point to bring up because I think we almost forget that. We often take our bodies for granted because, yes, we can have some cheese and champagne and stuff and nothing happens, at least on the surface level that we notice. So, the next day we don't wake up with a bloated face and a rash everywhere. But, our bodies are consistently kind of repairing the little baby damages. So I always say, like, imagine if you scrape yourself, that scrape is going to heal, but imagine if you kept picking the scab every single day, that scab is going to turn into like a really gnarly scar, and that's going to be there long, long term. So imagine that happening in your gut or on your heart or in your lungs, with these damages that we're doing on a consistent basis. So I think that's so important to say. We got to be pumping our body full of an overwhelming amount of nutrition.
Yeah. You want to overdo it a little bit, especially if your body's under stress. And what's so fascinating about the body, this is why I think, God is just like so smart, and he just wants us to be successful, right? And it's like the coolest thing, but your body is designed in this magical way where if you don't give it exactly what it needs, it has like 20 backup systems. So, but here's the thing, you don't want to be reliant on the backup systems. You want to save those for emergencies. So you want your health to be built out of like a concrete steel reinforced wall. You don't want to be giving it, those foam blocks that you played with when you were a kid and they look like brick, right? You don't want to be giving that, but your body will build systems and it will do processes based on what it can, and it'll kind of cheat. But even that can only last so long. So you want to overload your body with nutrients and with support so that it can first line defense do what it needs to do and not cheat, so that if you are stressed, your body can handle it and you're not totally crashing, and these systems aren't breaking down and your immune system isn't super suppressed and all these different things.
Oh, yeah, perfect. I'm so glad that we talked about that too. So I'm going to switch it up just a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about the mental health part of it, but more so if you could kind of speak to people who are looking at going like this integrative route. And I'm sure this happened to you too. I'm sure there's people in their life that are skeptical or maybe try to talk them out of it, because I think that's a big thing is if like I made the decision, let's say, to go chemo, but I wanted to do like a holistic route. I know there would be people in my life that would maybe not understand it, or they would doubt it, or they would be like the kind of naysayers. And I think that's really important for every person to make their health decisions based on their own intuition and their own guidance system. And if you feel like going an integrative route or a holistic route is for you, that there are people out there that can support you, like Kylene and her book and many other practitioners out there. So can you talk a little bit about that, your personal journey with that? Were people skeptical or maybe couldn't understand like all these other treatments you were doing when chemo was supposed to be like the only solution?
Oh my gosh. This was such a journey for me. So I was diagnosed in early February, and I did not start treatment until May. Now, 1 month of that was because I chose to do fertility preservation. And so they kind of give you grace if you want to go that route as a young female. However, a lot of that time was simply, I wanted to get very comfortable with my decision. And you talk about mental health, like whatever your treatment is, you have to be totally convinced that it's going to work for you and that it's the right decision. And here's the thing, everybody is going to have an opinion. It doesn't matter if you go conventional. It doesn't matter if you go holistic. It doesn't matter if you do integrative. Everyone's going to have their opinion of what is and is not right for you. And it doesn't matter. You have to do what you feel is right for you. And I encourage people in the book to really take the time to think about that, because like I said, unless it's an emergent situation where if you don't go into treatment by Monday, it's really going to hurt you. And ask your doctor that question. Be willing to ask as many questions as you need about like, how fast does this progress? Like what, how much time do I have before, you think it spreads? Is this something I can monitor while I think about this? Ask those questions. Any question that pops up into your head is a valid question. But I knew for me and my body, it was not an emergent situation. So I took time to think about it. And I did all the research, and I was absolutely getting a little bit of pressure. I'll be honest. My husband was extremely supportive. He was like, you do the research, whatever you need to do. On my end, I wanted the data. And one of the other key factors for me was ultimately I wanted to stay home. I wanted to be around my husband. I wanted to be around my family. Any sort of completely alternative care would have taken me out of state. And so that was a big determining factor for me. My parents, my dad was very much like chemo's the only way. Like, why, like, what's the deal? And so you just really have to, pray about it, come to the decision yourself, research it, have a reason for doing what it is that you're going to be doing. And we talk about mental health, you just have to be totally convinced. I'm convinced that integrative care is the way to go. If you ever want to err on the side of more natural, less conventional, that's great too, if that works for you. But if you're going to go conventional, I almost want to say, like, don't do that alone. If you're okay with that, fine. But integrative is just going to help so much in terms of supporting your body. So why not feel the best you can in the worst part of your life? You know what I mean? So yeah, there's just so many tools and resources out there. And actually, I have an entire resource chapter in my book. So you can Google the resources from, like, if you have the physical copy in your hands, you can Google what I put in there. Or if you join the Facebook group, or the Facebook group. I was going to say the Instagram page, but it's not on there. The Facebook group, Healthy Through Hodgkins, I actually have a link there where you can actually click the resources. So there, I have a lot of books that talk about cancer, a lot of podcasts, a lot of blogs, alternative care and integrative clinics. I actually have certain clinics that you can go to, or specific people that you might want to look up and research. So there's just a lot of tools that I try to provide everybody so that you can make that decision and feel really good about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, her resource section in her book is literally life-saving and time-saving because, like you said, when you had to make that decision from the day you got diagnosed to the day you actually started treatment, you spent a lot of that time researching, and, that takes weeks and hours of your day. And if you're a mom and you have a family and you're still running your business, like, who has 8 hours a day to research? Luckily for you, you were kind of ahead of the page with your business and what you do with other women. But I think for other people, when you are on a time crunch or you are feeling pressure to make a decision quickly, your resource section in your book and on the Facebook page is going to help people really condense that time frame. Getting all that information in one spot, I think that's brilliant and genius. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping that it helps a lot of people for sure. That's the goal.
So I feel like you just enlighten so many people with just this little bit of information. And so can you tell people how they can find you? And I would love for you to just share a little bit about your book and what people can find in there. I know we talked about the resource section. You talked a little bit about how you share your own journey and how you made your own decisions. What else can people kind of find in the book that will help them through their journey? And how can they find you and more information if they want to work with you one-on-one?
Yeah, so when I got diagnosed, some people were kind enough to send me books, and I just thought that was the sweetest thing. And so one of my goals is that, if you don't have cancer, but maybe you're listening to this and you know somebody who does, that this is a gift that can be given to them. It was really encouraging for me to get those. And sometimes as a cancer patient, you kind of want to relate to somebody that's been there, done that, and come through it. And so I really hope that this is something that, a woman with Hodgkins can read this and be like, oh my gosh, she's been there and she's come through it, because hope is such an incredible part of the healing journey, and you've got to hold on to that. You've got to believe that you're going to get well. And so I talk about purpose in my book. I talk about realizing that God planned every step of this. I talked about being open to learning lessons through the journey. I talked about optimizing nutrition and what that might look like for somebody who's just starting out and trying to navigate this situation, specifically with cancer. There's a chapter called Get That Bleep Out. And I'm a gut health specialist, so I like poo puns, and I talk about being constipated in that chapter, which is a real problem for a lot of people undergoing treatment and taking nausea medications. But I relate that to being emotionally constipated. And a lot of people will actually associate disease, and sometimes cancer specifically, with trapped emotions or traumas that have happened in your life, and just holding on to things and not releasing them. And so I talk about, spirituality and my beliefs and emotional healing, how important it is to be addressing all aspects of healing throughout this journey, and not just trying to focus on physically getting well from cancer, but identifying these other opportunities to heal in other areas of your life as a whole person as well. I talk about toxicity in the book, so how you can really optimize your environment. You can eliminate toxins moving forward. Hodgkins specifically does have like a connection to environmental toxicity. So I think it's very important for people to focus on nutrition moving forward during recovery, but also looking at things like chemicals in their homes, cleaning products, hair care, makeup, those sorts of things. So I talk about that. I make it really easy. I break it down. I give my personal recommendations for, what I've used, what I like. This has been a long time coming. It's been a long transition for me, swapping things out of my home. And so again, kind of creating that resource available for people. So hopefully it's a shortcut for you and you don't have to, spend hours and hours and hours trying different things. I found products that really work and are toxin free. So I recommend those in the book. And then I really briefly talk about, life after cancer. And it is something that you don't want to just, be done with treatment and then say, okay, I'm going to go back to living my life. You really have to give yourself grace. You have to realize that you're probably going to be tired. You're probably not able to jump right back into everything that you did before. You're not going to be able to work out the same. Life is just going to be a little bit different. But taking the time that this opportunity, if you want to consider it opportunity, which I encourage you to do, taking the time that this opportunity gives you to really think through, what are my goals in life? How do I want life to be different when I'm in remission? What are some things that God wants me to accomplish? What is my purpose? How can I live into that the rest of my life? These are a lot of things that, I had plenty of time to think about. There's a lot of sleeping time. There's a lot of bedtime. There's a lot of Netflix time. And there was a lot of these sort of aha revelations in my mind about how I wanted to live my life as well. So yeah, you can find the book at KyleneTurhune.com/book, or you can just go to Amazon and type in Healthy Through Hodgkins, and it's the first book that pops up, which is pretty cool. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook, so you can check it out on Instagram. It's at Kylene_Turhune_FDN. And on Facebook, you can join a free Facebook page. I have one for my regular business, which is nutrition that works for you. And then I have a specific Facebook page for Healthy Through Hodgkins as well.
I love that. And for anyone listening, you can go to the show notes. I'm going to link all of this right there. So you can just go to the show notes and click the link, and it'll bring you directly to all these resources. And you can find Kylene and reach out to her. And I really encourage anyone, if you are someone who is listening, who is like a health coach, or you work with clients one-on-one in the nutrition space, health space, even as personal trainers, unfortunately, the statistics do show that most people, if not everyone, will know someone who's diagnosed with cancer. And, Kylene and me and all the other practitioners out there are really helping maybe hopefully lower that statistic by helping people get healthy and get to root causes of issues. But I do encourage everyone to get at least 1 or 2 copies of this book and have it in your back pocket. And when you meet someone who is maybe just recently diagnosed, or someone that you know currently that is going through it, give them this book as a gift. I mean, like you said, getting these gifts when you're going through something so difficult is such a blessing, and they might not really be into this integrative or nutritional route, but maybe if they flip open the book and they read her story, or there's a page that speaks to them and it inspires them and gives them some insight onto other methods, I think that's just the biggest gift that we can give anyone. So I encourage everyone just to get a copy of this book, have it on hand, read it, and be ready to gift it to someone who might need it at any time that comes up. So thank you so much for being with us and sharing everything that you have with us, and just being a really big light in this world. I think, like you said, God gives us these challenges to overcome so that we can do great in the world and help other people going through it. We have to go through the darkness first to bring light to other people. So thank you so much. You're such an inspiration, girl. I love following you on social media.
Oh, thank you. Ditto. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, girl. We'll talk to you soon. And thank you so much. And thanks everyone for listening.